If you love ghost stories, folklore, and all things mysterious, you need to make a trip to Haunted in downtown Tullahoma, Tennessee. Just a short drive from Nashville, this family-owned Gothic shop is filled with the strange, unusual, and downright fascinating. This isn't a big box store full of mass-produced decorations. Haunted specializes in handmade curiosities, Gothic decor, metaphysical supplies, green witchcraft essentials, and unique pieces created by independent artists. Whether you're decorating or just looking for something you won't find anywhere else, Haunted is worth the trip. Visit them on 125 West Lincoln Street in Tullahoma, or shop online at hauntedstore.net. That's right, hauntedstore.net. Haunted, curated for the strange and unusual. I'm Sircy. Thanks for joining me today. So a while back, I did a story about Eva Dugan. She was a lady who was convicted of murder, and she was beheaded on the gallows in Arizona back in 1930. Her head popped off as soon as the rope pulled tight. Anyway, I had some pretty good feedback from the show, so I thought, why not do something similar? So just a heads up, this one's a little wild and maybe a bit gory, so let's dive in. Are you ready? January 31st, 1884, Cincinnati, Ohio. Before sunrise, in a cramped tenement room on Walker Street in Mount Auburn, 6 children woke to the sound of their father threatening to kill their mother. And what happened inside that room was so savage, so bizarre, and so horrifying that newspapers across the country carried the story for months. Reporters described the killer as a madman. Police said they had to capture him, quote-unquote, like a wild beast. His execution would end in one of the most gruesome hangings of the 19th century. And a year later, a strange story emerged from Ohio Tannery, a claim that someone had wanted to skin a condemned man and turn his hide into leather. This is the story of Patrick Hartnett. Patrick Hartnett was an Irish immigrant living in poverty in Cincinnati, Ohio. By 1884, he and his wife Mary and their 6 kids occupied a single room in a 3-story brick tenement on Walker Street. 2 families shared the building. Hartnett's family lived almost entirely inside one crowded room, roughly 12 feet square. One bed held most of the children. Another served as both sleeping quarters and furniture. The family survived largely through Mary's labor. She washed clothes for neighbors and wealthier residents while Patrick drifted between jobs. He drank heavily and he earned a reputation for violence. Neighbors knew the household was troubled. Newspaper accounts repeatedly described Hartnett as jealous, suspicious, and prone to drunken rages. He accused Mary of infidelity and frequently terrorized the family with threats. Yet no one could imagine what would happen on the morning of January 31st. According to testimony later repeated in newspapers, Mary rose early to prepare breakfast for their 13-year-old son before he left for work. Hartnett was awake. In a rough voice, he ordered her back into bed, and Mary obeyed. Then something changed. Hartnett suddenly stormed to the kitchen and grabbed an axe. He returned to the bed and pulled Mary to the floor. Before striking her, he forced her to kneel. Reports stated he compelled her to say her prayers and kiss the floor. All the while, he held the axe over her head. He accused her of being unfaithful. Mary vehemently denied it. The children, they watched in terror. Hartnett swung the axe. The first blow struck her hip. A second strike crushed her skull. Mary Hartnett died in front of all 6 of her children. The murder was shocking enough. What happened next made the case infamous. Instead of fleeing, Hartnett seemed almost euphoric. After dropping the axe, he lit a candle and he wandered into the kitchen. There he picked up a newspaper, began dancing a jig, singing Irish songs, and playing a harp while his wife's body lay on the floor. The children screamed. Their cries brought neighbors running. A woman named Henrietta Herder heard sounds she believed were chopping. Curious and alarmed, she approached the window and looked inside. The sight, it froze her. Mary Hartnett lay dead on the floor, the children huddled nearby in panic. Patrick Hartnett was still inside. Police officers Browning, Knapp, and Schrader quickly arrived to the scene. When they reached the room, Hartnett was standing near a window with his bloody axe in his hands. He threatened his children and warned officers he would kill them if they came any closer. The situation became dangerously, immediately. Officers, they tried to reason with him, but Hartnett refused. Several men attempted to lasso him through the window with a rope, but they failed. Meanwhile, the murderer continued ranting. Eventually, police forced their way through the back door. Hartnett fought violently. He grappled with officers, struggled with neighbors, and reportedly displayed tremendous strength. It took multiple men to overpower him. Even after they pinned him against furniture and disarmed him, he continued resisting, continued to fight. When police finally dragged him outside, a crowd had already gathered. Inside the room, investigators encountered one of the most horrifying crimes Cincinnati had seen in years. The body of Mary Hartnett lay near the center of the room. Blood covered the floor. Newspaper descriptions emphasized the brutality of the attack. The axe had nearly severed part of her body. The violence was so extreme that reporters struggled to describe it without shocking readers. The children were removed from the room. One daughter later provided a chilling account to a reporter. She stated that her father had threatened her mother repeatedly, and that morning he ordered Mary back to bed, grabbed the axe, and accused her of cheating. When Mary protested, that's when he attacked. The child said there was blood everywhere. She remembered hiding in terror after the killing. She remembered her father warning everyone that he would murder the rest of the family if anyone interfered. And those statements became important during the legal proceedings. But there was another development. Hartnett began claiming insanity. The moment officers questioned him, he launched into a rambling explanation. He spoke about jealousy, betrayal, and affairs. Reporters who interviewed him found his behavior unsettling. Sometimes he appeared calm. Moments later, he was excited, and then erratic. One reporter who visited him shortly after the murder described a strange conversation. Hartnett insisted his wife had confessed to cheating on him. She was not faithful. He claimed he had watched her for years. He described a growing obsession that consumed him. Yet many observers believe the insanity defense was merely an attempt to avoid execution. The public overwhelmingly viewed him as guilty. The murder was too brutal. The eyewitnesses, there were too many to count, and the surviving children had seen everything. The first trial attracted enormous attention. Crowds packed the courtroom. Newspapers printed lengthy reports on jury selection, witness testimony, and arguments from the attorneys. The defense attempted to portray Hartnett as mentally unstable. Prosecutors, however, they argued he knew what he was doing. And the jury, they convicted him. But there were some legal complications that followed. His conviction was overturned, and they required a second trial. By 1885, Patrick Hartnett once again sat in a Cincinnati courtroom facing a murder charge. The second trial became almost as famous as the first. One newspaper remarked on the jury pool assembling for the proceedings. There was a prominent businessman, respected citizens, and influential members of the community that showed up for jury service. And the jurors openly discussed the crime. Many admitted they had read accounts of the murder. Some described it as one of the most horrifying cases they had ever encountered. But they insisted they would remain impartial. And the defense, again, they pushed insanity. And the prosecution again relied on overwhelming evidence. The surviving children's testimony remained devastating, just like it was the first time. The physical evidence, it remained devastating as well. And Hartnett's own conduct after the murder, it remained impossible to explain away. He did dance a jig, right? The jury returned another guilty verdict, and this time the sentence was death. Patrick Hartnett was going to hang. On June 5th, 1885, he entered the Ohio Penitentiary. According to all accounts, his first question when he arrived at the prison, is this the place where they do them up? A strange comment, strange question, perhaps bravado, maybe nervous humor, perhaps resignation. Whatever the reason, it demonstrated the unusual attitude Hartnett displayed through much of his confinement. For weeks, reports described him as oddly indifferent. He ate. He slept. He spoke casually with guards and other inmates. Many observers expected a condemned murderer facing death to collapse emotionally. But not Hartnett. As the execution date approached, however, the confidence began to crack. Guards noticed increasing mood swings. He became more withdrawn, more aggressive, more unstable. He became violent after receiving a letter from his sister. When prison officials delayed handing it to him, Hartnett exploded. He rushed past guards, ran through part of the prison, and had to be physically subdued. Afterward, he raved and cursed like a madman. The incident fueled new discussions about his sanity. Was he really insane? Or simply terrified? He was going to be hanged. Opinions differed. His lawyers continued seeking delays. And then, on the eve of the scheduled execution, Governor George Hoadley granted a reprieve. Hartnett had already gone to sleep. Around 10 o'clock that night, guards woke him. At first, he believed it was time to die. He immediately got up and started dressing, preparing himself for the scaffold. Only afterward did officials explain that the execution had been postponed. The reaction was unexpected. Instead of relief, Hartnett became angry. He cursed his attorney. He blamed him for the conviction. He raged about the delay. The reprieve moved the execution. It delayed it to September 30th, 1885. For nearly another month, Hartnett remained confined inside the Ohio Penitentiary. By then, his mental condition appeared increasingly unstable. Some guards reportedly believed he might actually lose his mind before the new execution date arrived. But the courts ultimately upheld the sentence. September 30th arrived. The end had finally come. Accounts of Hartnett's final hours were extraordinary. Reporters described him as cheerful, almost unnaturally cheerful. At 1 o'clock in the morning, prison officials found him fully dressed and waiting. He shook hands with visitors. He joked. He laughed. He was in good spirits. A priest offered prayers, but Hartnett reportedly paid little attention. Shortly before the execution, he climbed the steps quickly, confidently, and witnesses noted his composure. Then the straps were secured. The noose was adjusted. At approximately 1:25 in the afternoon, the trap opened. What happened next became one of the most gruesome execution stories in Ohio history. Hartnett was a big man. Months of imprisonment had reportedly softened his flesh. When the rope snapped tight, the force was catastrophic. Newspapers reported that the drop nearly tore his head completely from his body. Blood erupted immediately. Witnesses described torrents of blood. Only a small strip of flesh reportedly remained, and it connected his head to the torso. Death was instantaneous. Even by 19th century standards, hardened observers were horrified. Executions were supposed to be swift. This had become something else entirely. Patrick Hartnett, the man who murdered his wife before 6 terrified children, danced beside her corpse, and spent months awaiting death, had effectively been beheaded on the gallows. Most stories would end there, but Hartnett's, it does not. Because a year later, newspapers published one of the strangest postscript stories attached to any 19th century murderer. In October 1886, amid political controversy involving Ohio Governor Joseph Foraker, the newspapers printed an affidavit from a Columbus tannery foreman named John Hallhaber. Hallhaber claimed that in June 1885, a man identifying himself as Dr. Montgomery visited the tannery. According to him, the doctor said an inmate at the penitentiary was going to be executed, and he made a special, shocking request. He wanted the convict's skin tanned into leather. Hallhaber claimed he refused. The doctor supposedly never returned. Newspapers immediately began investigating. Who was the condemned prisoner? Two men were awaiting execution around that time. One was a man named Wagner, the other, Patrick Hartnett. And critics quickly attacked the story. Records show Wagner's body had been claimed by family and buried. Hartnett's body had also been taken and buried by friends after he was hanged. Skeptics argue the tannery tale made little sense. If the bodies were already claimed, why would anyone try to get their skin and tan it? Others pointed out that 19th century medical schools and anatomical collectors sometimes engaged in practices that sound unimaginable today. Body snatching occurred. Skeletons were prepared. Human skin occasionally appeared in medical curiosities and books. Suddenly, the story seemed less impossible. Still, no evidence ever emerged that Hartnett's skin was actually taken. No leather surfaced. No preserved artifact was discovered. No proof ever confirmed the story. Yet the allegation spread around Cincinnati because it fit the grotesque reputation surrounding the case. Patrick Hartnett had committed one of Cincinnati's most horrible domestic murders. He had frightened police, jurors, prison guards, and reporters. He had nearly been decapitated during his execution. And now, even after death, rumors suggest someone wanted to transform his body into leather. Whether true or not, the tannery story becomes the final bizarre chapter in one of Ohio's darkest 19th century crimes. The image it remains impossible to forget. A crowded tenement room, 6 terrified children, an axe, a murderer dancing beside the body of his dead wife. Then a scaffold in Columbus, a trap door that opened, a rope snapping tight, and a death so violent that witnesses spent years talking about it. More than a century later, Patrick Hartnett remains one of the most disturbing figures in Ohio criminal history, not simply because of the brutality of his crime, but because every chapter it followed somehow became stranger than the one before. And if you enjoyed this episode, check out my book, Ghost Stories and Graveyard Tales Cincinnati, where I dive deeper in the haunted history of Cincinnati. So many great stories from the old music hall is built on top of an old pauper's graveyard. And speaking of graveyards, grave robbing. Man, that was a huge thing in Cincinnati. I can go on and on about that. Ghost Stories and Graveyard Tales Cincinnati. It's available on Kindle. If you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read it for free. In fact, all my books are on Kindle. Kindle Unlimited. Read them all for free. Go to Amazon, type in Alan Sircy or Southern Ghost Stories, Ghost Stories and Graveyard Tales. Type it in there. They'll all pop up. And my new book, Pistols Red River, is also available. You can grab a copy of that too over on Amazon. Have you guys been to MonsterCityMadhouse.com yet? The new Creature from the Black Lagoon shirt, man, it's a whole lot of fun. Who says monsters can't have a work-life balance? This Lagoon Life shirt celebrates everyone's favorite gill man, living his best swamp life with a family. Whether he's teaching the kids to do the backstroke or just vibing by the lagoon, this vintage cotton polyester blend tee proves that even creatures from the deep deserve a tropical vacation. It's perfect for horror fans who appreciate a little domestic bliss. Monster style. Don't forget to use promo code SAVE10 to get 10% off your order. That's right, MonsterCityMadhouse.com. Type in SAVE10, get 10% off your order. And if you haven't already, make sure you're following or subscribing to the show wherever you listen. Leave a rating if you can, and share the show with someone who's into true crime, ghost stories, or weird history. Stuff matters more than people think. In fact, I have a little giveaway going on. For the next few weeks, I have 2 free tickets to give away to CreepyCon in Knoxville, July 31st through August 2nd. And if you will leave a review and a rating of the site and send me a screenshot to southernghoststories@gmail.com, I'm going to pick a winner to give the 2 free tickets to CreepyCon. So it's going to be a big weekend. I'm looking forward to that, July 31st through August 2nd. It's one of the biggest horror conventions in all of Tennessee. Kane Hodder, Felissa Rose, all those icons of horror are going to be there. I'll be there signing books in the Southern Ghost Stories booth. Ben from Monster City Madhouse, he'll be in his booth selling his fun t-shirts. So make plans to come see us in Knoxville. And please leave a review for the show and shoot over a screenshot at southernghoststories@gmail.com. Also, follow Southern Ghost Stories on Facebook, on Instagram, or Facebook. Thank you for listening to Southern Ghost Stories. I'm Alan Sircy, the American Historian, and I will see you on the next show. If you love ghosts, cryptids, UFOs, and everything that goes bump in the night, then mark your calendars for the West Kentucky Paranormal Expo, happening September 26 in Mayfield, Kentucky at the Mayfield Graves County Fairgrounds. This incredible one-day event brings together some of the biggest names in the paranormal community, including Aaron G. Thompson from Netflix's 28 Days Haunted, Jimmy and Jeffrey from Outlaw Paranormal, The Wyndham Bros, Josh Morris, Michael Huntington, Rachel Ravensville, and many, many more special guests and speakers. Your admission is just $15, and that gets you an all-day come-and-go wristband so you can explore at your own pace. Browse more than 35 vendors, enjoy delicious food trucks, attend speaker presentations and panels, meet investigators, hear incredible stories, and dive into the worlds of hauntings, cryptids, UFOs, and the unexplained. Whether you're a seasoned ghost hunter or just curious about the mysteries that surround us, there's something for everyone at the West Kentucky Paranormal Expo. Tickets are on sale now. For more information, visit West Kentucky Paranormal Expo on Facebook and get ready for one of the most exciting paranormal events of the year. We'll see you in Mayfield on September 26th. Monster City Madhouse, a year-round online store full of Halloween and classic horror shirts with an emphasis on the vintage look. Use code SAVE10 for 10% off your order. MonsterCityMadhouse.com. Free shipping and financing's available.